Yo, what's going on, guys? Today's build is going to be an Ice Crash Slayer using the Voidforged sword. Let's get into it. I wanted to make a melee build with huge area of effect that wasn't Cyclone. I decided on Ice Crash because the damage potential was really good on a relatively cheap budget. The build ended up being really well rounded, great defense and sustain paired with high area of effect and damage. This character excels at all content in the game and is probably my favorite of the league. Ice Crash is an AoE physical melee skill that converts 50% of the physical to cold damage. You slam the ground and deal damage in 3 stages, dealing less damage on the second and third stage. We'll be converting fully to cold damage through the tree and gear. Ice Crash has a nice weighty, satisfying feel to it, as do most cold-based skills in Path of Exile. Pairing the ability with Herald of Ice makes for some really enjoyable high area clear. We're running the, in my opinion, underrated Voidforged sword. This two-handed sword gives attack speed, area of effect, life, allows all of your elemental damage to shock, and you gain 300% of weapon physical damage as extra damage of a random element, which means stacking flat physical damage is really strong. The downside is you deal no non-elemental damage, but since we're fully converting to elemental, this doesn't matter. The main reason I wanted to go Slayer was for the area of effect, and overall it's a well-rounded ascendancy for Ice Crash. Berserker has really high damage potential as well. We'll go into impact first for the AoE, accuracy rating, and a more multiplier based on enemy proximity. Headsman next, giving 10% more damage if you've killed recently, 20% more damage against unique enemies, and you can't take reflected physical damage, which is irrelevant because we're full cold conversion. Next, Bane of Legends, which gives a culling strike against enemies that have 20% life or lower, along with 20% attack speed for 20 seconds when you kill a rare or unique enemy, and 20% move speed for 20 seconds after killing any enemy. You could also forgo both Headsman and Bane of Legends and go into the Leech side of the Ascendancy. I wouldn't really recommend this except for maybe as a respec for Uber Elder, but it is an option. Overwhelm Last, which increases the base critical strike chance for attacks with weapons to 8%. The Voidforged normally has a base crit of 5%, so this is really strong, along with 10% crit multi per nearby enemy up to 100%, which is pretty insane for mapping. Nearby enemies also have minus 30% to crit strike multiplier, which is an underrated defensive boost. Let's talk about the rest of the gear next. For the helmet, you can't beat the Abysses for damage. It gives a ton of crit multi and a ton of flat physical to pair with the Voidforge. The downside of taking increased physical damage can feel pretty scary against legions, and assume that you're going to take a death here or there if you're wearing this. The tankier option while still getting some damage would be a fossil crafted helmet. I bought the base with the Ice Crash enchant and then spammed life and cold fossils until I rolled this. Truthfully, I really don't feel like the Abysses is needed. The damage feels great even without it. For the chest, a Carcass Jack will increase your AoE even more and increase your damage a bit. But my recommendation would be something like this rare chest I'm currently wearing, giving a ton of life and decently high armor. For the amulet, I'm running the Pandemonious. This is a great offensive and defensive option. You chill enemies for 1 second when hit, and chilled enemies are also blinded. We're going to be chilling and freezing like crazy with Ice Crash as well. This is extremely good against Legion rares. We also get a fat 20% cold pen against chilled enemies. This is a decently expensive item. Even though it's powerful, it's not crucial to the build. Run a cheaper rare amulet if you don't have the bankroll for this. For the gloves, I'm running a pair with attack speed, flat accuracy, increased damage against chilled enemies, and physical to cold conversion. We get up to 90% cold conversion from the tree. This takes care of the last 10%. Boots are high life and resists. I prefer an attack speed if you've killed recently lab enchant. Belt's going to be a Stygian Vice with high life and resists, and elemental damage with attacks if you can afford it. For rings, I went life and resists with flat physical rolls and accuracy. For jewels, I'm running a Tempered Flesh. This gives 5% crit multi per 10 strength on unallocated passives and radius. Currently this is giving me 70% crit multi, slotted in directly left of the Marauder starting area. I'm also running a Lethal Pride jewel that's mostly just giving me life, and then 20% fire res, which is helping me balance my Wise Oak. For rare jewels, get life and damage stats, I prefer attack speed. I'm running 2 unique flasks, the Lion's Roar and the Wise Oak. Lion's Roar gives more melee damage and 3000 flat armor. This pairs very well with Molten Shell, which we'll discuss more later. The Wise Oak gives damage penetration for each element for which your uncapped elemental resistance is the highest. I've balanced my resists so that I'm getting this pin for all 3 elements. You don't have to do this, but because the Void Forge gives you extra damage of a random element, it's quite strong. I'm also running a Life Flask with bleed removal, a Diamond Flask with curse removal, and an Onslaught Flask with freeze removal. Next up, the gems. We'll talk about the 6th link first. Keep in mind there are a lot of great options for melee supports this patch. After a lot of testing, this is the setup that I prefer. Ice Crash, elemental damage with attacks, Fortify, Hypothermia, Multistrike, and Pulverize. A lot of people really don't like the new Multistrike, and truthfully I didn't give it a chance for a while, but adding this in really changed how the build felt for general mapping. Just makes the build feel really good to play in my opinion. You don't have to run it. You could run melee physical, ruthless, rage, or even faster attacks here. For bossing, you can also swap out Pulverize for either melee physical or ruthless if you want. Leap Slam linked to faster attacks, blood magic, and endurance charge on melee stun. Ancestral War Chief and Ancestral Protector linked to multiple totems. We're running a level 1 cast when damage taken linked to Frost Bomb and Assassin's Mark. You can also add in any golem of your choosing into this setup. For auras, I'm running Hatred and Blood and Sand. Sand stands for general mapping. You will have enough damage to stay in Sand stance for even map bosses. Then Blood stands for Shaper Guardians and above. I like Herald of Ice for mapping. It gives a bit more area clear and those nice feeling shatter explosions. For bossing, switch to Herald of Purity for the added flat physical damage. I'm also running a level 1 precision for the crit and a bit of flat accuracy. Rounding out the gems, we have Blood Rage for the frenzy charge generation while mapping and attack speed, and Vol Molten Shell. We aren't stacking a crazy amount of armor like some other builds, but this is still very strong. The regular Molten Shell will give around a 2k shield, and Vol will be around 6k with my current armor. Keep in mind you want to activate Lion's Roar first to maximize this buff. Here's the finalized passive tree. I'll leave a link to the path of building in the info section of this video. For Pantheons, Soul of the Brine King for majors, and whatever minor you like. For bandits, either help Alira or kill all. For leveling this character, level with whatever melee skill you like until 28, then switch to Ice Crash. At level 51, make sure you equip a Terminus Est sword. This will carry you until you're able to equip the Void Forge. So that'll about wrap it up, guys. I'm going to leave you with the rest of this Uber Elder kill. Now, this wasn't the fastest kill. Somebody that's more experienced with melee will be able to kill Uber Elder much faster with this build. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.